Pay-to-play, NIL, and transfer portal, what the impact is on college sports. You can see some of the major players that are going to help decide this whole settling out of college sports situation. All these guys on the left side there have an impact in the decisions. One's the Department of Labor. They're going to come down with a heavy hand and make sure that if we're going to start treating college athletes as employees, which it sounds like we are, then a whole bunch of new laws and rules are going to come in, including Title IX is one of those rules.
And are they employees? So when they receive a scholarship, that now has monetary value that they have to pay tax on.
That's right.
Right.
That's
so
exactly.
It gets really complicated.
Yeah. So then you have the College Athletes Players Association, CAPA, which always, since it's been formed for a long time, has had very little power and has had very little kind of impact on college sports. But the feeling is that they're going to start becoming much more of a player and much more powerful, because they're probably going to be doing things like collective bargaining of college athletes with the schools. So you could see this CAPA organization becoming a much bigger factor. You have the NCAA Division I group there on the left. Division I, of course, is going to have most of the power in football because they've got all the big conferences. You have the Olympics organization. The reason that they're involved here is they went through this exact process over 2 decades ago, when there was a debate happening over whether we should allow professional athletes play in the Olympics or not. And that decision got forced by, at that time, the Dream Team, which was the U.S. basketball team, because they wanted Michael Jordan and those guys to play. So eventually, Olympics went ahead and buckled and allowed in pro athletes into the Olympics. So they're going to be a big part of the discussion. Then you got the college football playoff and March Madness, which are the two, Mac daddies of what's going forward, especially with the college football playoff now expanding to 12 teams. Let's take a look at what we got here. First one's these are the pay-to-play rules. February 2024, federal judge ruled the NCAA must allow players and NIL boosters to negotiate NIL deals before a player commits. So that was a big change. Before that, the player had to basically commit before they would get an NIL deal package in place. The ruling could contribute to the death of amateurism, which is already on life support. And then I mentioned the class action lawsuit, the $20 billion that is going to court in January of 2025, unless the NCAA can settle that lawsuit, which they're trying very hard to do right now. Any thoughts about these?
Just that it's a brave new world.
Yeah. I think it makes it. I think it makes it fair, somewhat, for all athletes to be able to have an opportunity.
Yeah. And I can see why you would say that. I mean, there's definitely an argument to that case that really they've been employees all along. They just haven't been compensated. So
there's no doubt that a better system awaits us. The question is, should it be the Wild West, or should there be some rules that make it a little more fair? Because otherwise small schools might just go under or get rid of their programs.
Well, that's what will happen. A lot of the small schools will just get rid of football.
We don't want that either. So we got to find some kind of balance. We don't want just 10 good teams and everything else goes away, because that could very well happen.
Yeah.
We don't want that. We want the lower schools in the SEC and ACC and Big Ten and all that to exist and to thrive and to let people have a shot. If you look at the NFL rosters, they're made up of everywhere. Division II, yeah,
but only, like Jackson said earlier, and it was a really good point, only 2% of college athletes go on to play professional.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah. That means 98% go on to just regular life. And the question is, do you want to give those 98% an opportunity? And that's what Jackson's arguing here, and I agree with him.
Yeah, I agree.
They should be able to make some money in college, because a lot of them will never go pro.
I love the idea of a student who's a good player in college but probably not going to make it, having the ability to make a little chunk of money that they can do for a down payment on a house. To me, that is so exciting, that they get to launch into the next chapter with a little bit of an advantage. For all the sacrificing they've done, they deserve that. So, that's, to me, that's a no-brainer. The question is, should there be rules about it? more clear than what they are today. And I think that is where I feel like, yes, there should be a little bit more regulation, but not too much so that students can be advantaged by it. Athletic programs can get to a healthier place financially. You can work out what it's like to fly your wrestling team to another coast just for a regular game or match, and not go under as a program. Because football is not the only concern here. A lot of these sports don't make money; they lose money, and football pays for them. And so,
Agreed. So pay to play fallout ruling will have other consequences. Athletic departments can now facilitate NIL deals as of 2024, which is a huge change from 3 years ago when NIL started. Essentially, teams can have, or programs can have, NIL coordinators to help players, arrange for, the commercial with a local car dealership or whoever it is. So that's going to be a big change, and I'm not sure what impact that's going to have. Hopefully, it'll be better for the player, I would think. Also, media companies can offer players NIL deals as a share of revenue. The NCAA also is barred from enforcing its rule of restitution. So, in other words, if any of the players' lawsuits that are happening right now get overturned in any way, the NCAA can't come back on them later on. And some of the effects of the rulings that will happen next year will be tested for the first time in the transfer portal that we're in right now in the spring of 2024. What are your thoughts, Jackson, about making NIL easier and allowing schools to facilitate it and those kinds of things?
I think it could honestly help it because being young and coming right out of high school, especially because I had an NIL deal at Kentucky, I didn't really understand all that aspect. So a company could write you a contract, and you could sign your name, and you could sign something that you have no idea what you're getting yourself in for.
Right.
So having the schools and having the NCAA to be able to regulate that and review that now kind of helps the younger athletes, the younger people that are still new to all this, be able to maybe not get into something that they will regret in the long run. Because some companies may try to sneak in something that you don't read, or so. I know there's a lot of people.
That's a really good perspective, Jackson. I hadn't thought of. The schools can act as kind of like a semi-agent for players who can't have an agent, right? And make sure that they're looking out for your better interests, and that you're not being asked to do something by the company that maybe you didn't want to do, or something like that.
For sure.
Really,
And NIL deals, and NIL money in general is you have to pay taxes on it as well. A lot of people don't know that, and there's been cases where kids get NIL money and blow through it, and then it comes around, they have to pay taxes, and they already spent all the money. So that's another thing that they try to teach us and try to regulate. So they kind of have us, if you do get like a big deal, kind of set aside money for taxes or whatever, and so you don't blow through that and end up in a bad situation.
So how did the NIL deal for you work? Did you have to sign a contract? Was it for a specific period of time?
Yeah, so I actually got a call one morning through one of the people that worked at Kentucky for the football team, do like they just were like a player personnel kind of person. And they're like, would you be interested in doing an NIL deal? I was like, yes, of course. It was some company called Visit Lex, which is like Lexington's, I don't know how to explain it, like where people can go and like a tourism website where people can book things, as well as where people go to like just see Lexington and where it promotes Lexington. And we did a deal with a local farm. There was a kid on our team named Kenneth Horsey. So and my last name being Moore, the whole idea behind the campaign was More Horsey. So we went and took pictures with the horse. Before that, I had to sign a contract. The contract was very straightforward. It wasn't too in detail. In my case, you also have to get the contract approved first
Mhm.
before you can do it. So, um,
Mhm.
got it signed. They tell you how they're gonna pay you. They tell you how much they're gonna pay you. All that stuff.
Mhm.
I did that. Did the deal. It was like an hour and a half of taking pictures and a little video with some horses, and
Mhm.
boom, that they paid me when they were supposed to pay me, and they stuck to their word. We stuck to ours, and
That's
um,
great.
it was awesome.
Yeah.
And as well as we did the NIL deal with Visit Lex, but it ended up going beyond that.
Mhm.
The deal was posted all over ESPN as well as like other media websites. So not only did I get publicity from Visit Lex, but also it was able to build my brand and my name a little bit on a national stage such as ESPN.
Yeah. Yeah. Man,
That's
that's
so
awesome. That's awesome. I'm really glad to hear it's working that way. That gives me a lot of
yeah.
hope that maybe we will have a go forward that really works for everybody and gives players an opportunity. That's
I
great.
think there's a lot of positives that are coming out of this. And I like hearing the anecdotes of it. I've seen a
Mhm.
bunch. Believe me, the NC State basketball team became heroes around here when they
Mhm.
Oh
made
yeah.
it to the Final Four this year.
Yep.
And all of a sudden on the radio, I'm hearing several of the players, DJ Burns and
Mhm.
DJ Moore, um, were at a local Chili's or something like that, signing autographs,
Mhm.
and it ended up being something like 5,000 people lined up waiting to
Oh
meet
my
him.
God.
Uh,
Wow.
it was just, it was. Police had to be brought in because it was so out of control. Everyone was behaving, but it was so big that they didn't plan on. They couldn't
Yeah.
believe it. So it's so exciting to see college kids do something special and then get rewarded for it.
Mhm.
I There's something that doesn't sit right with me with transferring to get more money. I'm not sure why that bothers me a little bit, but to watch kids on campus happy with the school, doing their best, doing something special, and getting rewarded is so great that
Yeah.
I don't know that you can legislate the other out. But
I agree. I agree. So, what are NIL deals? They're agreements in which college athletes are compensated for the use of their name, image, or likeness. So, historically, NCAA has had very strict rules barring college athletes from profiting off their name, image, and likeness while they're eligible to compete. But in recent years, starting in 2021, NIL rules have changed and loosened up, and now that given athletes the ability to earn additional income. And you just heard Jackson's testimony on one of his NIL deals. Typically, NIL deals have not been facilitated by schools, but now they are getting facilitated by schools. And again, Jackson, you just confirmed that with the call from the school. Would you be interested in doing this deal? Any thoughts about where you think this is going from an NIL perspective?
I think it's definitely got a positive trend to it. I mean, for somebody that I was a freshman, I wasn't the star player of the team. I wasn't even the starter of the team. So for somebody like me that isn't really getting their name out too much, just having an opportunity like that to be able to get my name out and be able to
Mhm.
connect with people because now I have contacts to businesses and everything for
Mhm.
future. Um, so just giving the opportunity for kids that, like I said, don't have the biggest name right now, giving them an opportunity, I think
Yeah.
has really opened up a lot of doors,
So
for
would you
sure.
agree that for 99% of the athletes, this system is going to work and it's going to get better and it's going to be positive? I think
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
concern is for the very small number of folks like a Marvin Harrison Jr. or a Caleb Williams, these guys who essentially took a pay cut by going to the NFL because like Marvin Harrison was offered something like 15 million to stay at Ohio State for another year.
Hmm.
So my question is should there be some limits on the top end of some of these deals so that it doesn't get so out of whack? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think no matter what, no matter what happens, there's always going to be some sort of those kind of problems. A lot of people are money hungry nowadays. So, I mean, in this day and age, I think no matter what kind of rules play into place, they're going to find a way to beat around the bush to get more money, keep the
Yeah,
players around.
yeah.
Um, but like we mentioned before, I think there are so many goods with this that like they definitely do outweigh the bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I just any rule that gets put into place, I feel like there's gonna be something that happens that is gonna be able to somehow like dodge the rule, kind of get around it a little bit.
Sounds good. Well, I think it's like you said. I think it's heading in a positive direction, and I'm hopeful that they'll find some at least reasonable rules around some of this.
And
So,
let's also remember, back in the day, it wasn't exactly super fair. I mean,
right,
I'm not going to name universities, but I had friends who played D1, huge football program, that used to receive envelopes of money every single home game, and so did their mom. And I know for a fact that as a Virginia fan, our team wasn't doing that. And so how do you compete when these guys are going up, against, but he said that the problem was staying a starter because only the starters got paid. And then he'd look over and there was 4 5-star All-Americans underneath him as underclassmen working out
yeah,
next to him. He felt he had to do more reps because they were catching him. So there was just, it wasn't perfect back then either. There were issues from school to school on how
sure.
much they adhered to the rules. So I don't think you'll ever have 100%, but I think if you can set some kind of standard that most schools follow, especially the really um, the ones that believe in setting up these students for their future, whether it's academically or athletically, either way they're fine. The good academic institutions and the ones that really are all about the well-being of the student's future. Then I think then the outliers won't matter that much.
Makes sense. So some other new rules coming for NIL this year, starting August 1st. So basically end of the summer. There will be new rules allowing athletes to pursue NIL opportunities without limitations imposed by the NCAA. And essentially, the reason they're putting that in place is the NCAA sees the writing on the wall that if they try to impose any limits on what you can be compensated, they're going to get sued by athletes. So, my hopes for reasonable caps, I think, is probably unrealistic. It seems like if you can get the money and you can get the NIL deal, then go for it. That's what it seems like to me. Any
But
thoughts here?
it is possible that they end up with some kind of cap on the university, and it's
Right.
probably a big number. And so you ask yourself, is this one player worth a third of my cap money for the whole school? Probably
Yeah.
not. Let's knock that down a little, or they can work out something, I think.
No, I think the cap will come in, but it'll come in for pay to play. It's not going to come in for NIL. That's just my feeling on it.
Probably right.
Pay
Probably
to
right.
play is something the schools control. NIL is something that's outside the schools. As a matter of fact, you see there in the second paragraph that NIL deals must be independent and not tied to enrollment, performance, or team membership.
Mhm.
And because of that, I think that these are going to be really hard to control.
It is interesting to watch Texas with Arch Manning. He's not even a starter, and he's getting compensated like that, like in a huge way. I wonder if future companies are watching that, saying, "Let's make sure they're starters first, or let's to do the big money." I'm talking, whatever he makes, $5 million a year, 10. Let's go for the smaller deals, maybe if they're not really a starter yet. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
really know how it's all going to play
Caleb
out.
Williams made $5 million last year. This year he's going to make 2.4. So yeah,
Yeah, that doesn't seem right as far as
yeah,
I don't know what you do about it, but it seems crazy.
it does. All right, well, let's look at some of the open questions for NCAA, and then we'll wrap it up. So the first one is, should there be a salary cap in football and maybe in basketball? What do you guys think? Again, this is when we get to pay to play.
I'm not too sure. I don't really know how I feel about that quite yet. I feel like it could go kind of either way, and I feel like maybe a salary cap would help, but also hurt, and then not have a salary cap would help and hurt. So I feel like there's a bunch of pros and cons for both sides. So I don't really have a strict opinion on that.
I think from the fans' perspective, who likes to see upsets and likes to see parity and likes to see balance, salary cap would be necessary, because the only way you're going to have a situation where only 6 teams dominate every single year versus real parity is if you have a salary cap. That's just my opinion.
Yeah,
Robbie?
I do think if you have a salary cap of some kind, it'll prevent teams from throwing a ridiculous amount of money at one player to bring him to your program.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have to spread it out over a certain number of players, I don't know. I think it's just really up in the air. They got to work all this stuff out. There's so many moving parts to this that I don't know how it's all going to fit together. My tendency is to say there have to be some parameters here. I'd like to see a lot of that money spread around more players. And I think that would be more useful if you have a salary cap. I think it would go to more players. I don't think you're going to pay your quarterback half your entire stash.
Sports budget.
Your budget. But right now, I think there's so much pressure that they'll make that mistake. And then you have players that aren't stars missing out on deals because they had to lump together every single thing they had to get this one guy.
When you get a Caleb Williams in your program, you're going to have to pay him 25% of your salary cap. So
yeah, I think that'll limit some of that, and you'll have it spread around more of your program, not just football players, but and then also there'll be a little bit more competitiveness among schools, instead of the haves and the have-nots, which I think you'll always have haves and have-nots. But I think if you have some limitations, like unlimited free agency and unlimited amount of money a player can make, sounds to me like it's going to hurt programs if you allow that.
So number 2 is, should players have to sign a contract, maybe at least 2 years? So if we're going to go to pay to play and we're going to professionalize college athletics, should players have to sign a contract like a professional would?
Coming from an athlete, I personally wouldn't want to do that.
Okay.
Just because I feel like for the rare case that like what happens like with the transfer portal and all that, like then you're kind of stuck there, and I feel like that could hurt your career a lot.
Okay.
Because if you come in as a young guy out of high school and you're promised a lot of things and something happens and that may not be true, or something happens with your performance, you're not performing how you were supposed to. I feel like if you're buying into that contract, it could hurt your career because if you wanted to transfer for a better opportunity, you couldn't.
So you like the situation where every year the football, basketball, all the teams have to relook at their rosters top to bottom and potentially could be losing and gaining people. You like that situation? Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's better for the athlete and not as good for the fans, because you might have
or the coaches
all this changeover of players constantly, and you never. What I remember was so cool going to school was having sort of these heroes of yours that you were actually in class with rising to the level of third year, fourth year, fifth year, senior, and you really looked up to them, and they weren't just gone the next year. They were, I don't know how to describe it, but it was really cool to be able to see them in place for a while. And I think
follow their journey.
You follow their journey and you stay with them and you build this allegiance to them. It was so easy to, I think they sold more jerseys back then because there was more people who knew who Herman Moore was, And
it's not just that. You have fans don't know who's on their team every year. Like you have a situation where they used to keep a player for 4 or 5 years. You knew exactly what your roster looked like coming back. And now your roster is completely different every year.
So that's what I'm saying is it might be the advantage for the player and at the detriment of the fan. So I think there's still work to be done on finding that common ground so that everybody finds a win. Maybe after your first transfer, there starts to be rules, maybe.
And there's a third party you haven't talked about, and that's the coaches, right? So you mentioned Jackson. Dabo Sweeney doesn't like to play in the portal. What he likes to do is recruit a guy and keep him for 4 or 5 years and develop him and bring him along. Well, We have a basketball coach that we like named Tony Bennett for Virginia who likes to do the same thing. And he's always had success by keeping these guys. He'll usually redshirt them first year and then keep them for 5 years total, like a Malcolm Brogdon. And that's not reality anymore. He's having to completely readapt. And you're having guys retire from coaching altogether because they don't want to deal with it. So it's better for the player. It's not as good for the fan or the coach, because the coach has spent all this time recruiting and then all of a sudden you're gone after a year. So,
yeah.
It's an interesting counterbalance, but I can definitely understand you as a player's position for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. 3 is, would players need to sit out a year the second time they transfer? So this current rule that's coming in, as you just saw in the previous slide, is that all rules are out the window, and essentially you can transfer anytime you want with no retribution, as many times as you want. So what do you guys think here?
I think I like how it is now. After the second time, then you would have to sit. Kind of gives you a little bit of leeway, so in case you end up going into a different situation. But I mean, a lot of these rules, like we've mentioned, could be positive or negative in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's ways we could come up with scenarios where this would be unfair, and then other ones where this would be a perfect rule. So
I find it interesting, Jackson, you said that SEC has its own rules, and they seem to be stricter than the NCAA rules. That's interesting. You can't go to another SEC school, and you have to sit out after the second transfer.
Yep. Yep. If you go through the spring with an SEC football program, you can't transfer to another SEC football program.
It's interesting. Huh.
I think it's just for more so a player could go through the spring, learn all the plays, and then have already a deal set up at another school and go there and completely give it away. So I think the SEC itself is trying to limit that a little bit.
For sure. Number 4 is, how do we minimize impact on less popular sports? Will they lose funding? I think the answer is probably yes. And some of those sports will have to go away, unfortunately. I'm hoping we can minimize that as much as possible. I'm a fan of all college sports. I love lacrosse. I love college baseball. I love all of them. And really, kind of breaks my heart to think about some of the smaller sports having to go away so that we can pay, Caleb Williams $5 million a year.
it's just a reality that lacrosse and hockey are regional,
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is. Not everyone has a lacrosse or hockey team.
Yeah.
And I love those sports.
What can we do to minimize impact on the less popular sports? I guess that's the question here.
Make sure that nobody makes a huge mistake in TV deals.
Mm-hmm.
So that it puts conferences in really unhealthy positions. Maybe require them to sign shorter TV deals so that if something changes drastically, you can get out of it quicker.
And I think what's going to end up happening is football programs and basketball programs are going to end up separating out their budgets from the rest of the general budget. That's what's going to end up happening. And then schools are going to have to make decisions about whether they want to support those sports or not.
Yeah.
Do we want to have a hockey team? Do we want to have a swim team? Do we want to have a lacrosse team?
If you're North Carolina and you have the top brand of any NCAA team and you're 20 to 50 million in the hole, you're going to have to cut your least popular sports. I mean, because sending them out to Berkeley to play on a Tuesday when there's no revenue at all is going to stop. They're just not going to do it.
Next one is, how do schools still comply with Title IX? Will women's sports lose funding due to new pay-to-play system that is coming? And I think Title IX is under tremendous pressure already, with some situations with men playing in women's sports and with funding that could dry up for women's sports due to the pay-to-play system. So what do you guys think here?
We actually had to go to meetings about Title IX.
Did you?
Yeah, as athletes, they took everybody in, and kind of just it wasn't more so about winning sports as much as just like respecting those sports and those people are part of those sports. But I feel like it's definitely taught and talked about a lot more behind the scenes than maybe to the public eye. I think we can keep it balanced. I think there'll definitely be, like we've talked about this whole time, there'll definitely need to be some rules implicated, but um, I feel like they've done a fairly good job so far. Like we mentioned, it's been pretty smooth so far with the portal and the NIL. Um, Now it's the matter of fact about keeping it that way. But I think I think overall that they could do it, that they could keep it pretty balanced.
Did you guys think that you could compete when you were at Kentucky with the rest of the SEC schools? I mean, did you feel?
Oh, 100, yeah, 100%. I mean, every single game we came in with an opportunity to win. I mean, you even saw Georgia, who was supposed to be the best team, came in a couple close games with, Auburn. Same with Alabama, came in a close game with Auburn.
Yep.
We came in close games with a bunch of those teams, Tennessee, Missouri, and even for sake in our bowl game, we played against an ACC team, and it was really good game. So I don't think there was really ever a game where we went in feeling like we didn't have a single shot at all.
So was that quarterback the ex-NC State quarterback?
Yes,
was, right?
he was.
Leary, yeah.
Larry.
Yeah. It's actually
Cool.
crazy because my dad went to NC State, so I grew
You
up an
did?
NC State fan.
Oh, cool.
I had season tickets to all the NC State games until this past year, obviously, but I like going through like my younger years of high school and stuff like that. I would grow up going to the games and seeing Devin Leary and seeing him play and all that, and then going to Kentucky and be able to walk 5 steps around the corner and he's right there. It was kind of a cool experience for sure.
I
Yeah.
bet. Is he a cool guy?
Oh yeah, all those guys are cool. I mean, the most popular guys treat, for the most part, well, at Kentucky at least, were very humble, had a good head on their shoulders. They, as a backup kicker, they would treat me with the same amount of respect as they would treat their starting wide receiver. So, those players, they in the locker room, it really is a brotherhood. I mean, you hear a lot of people say it is a brotherhood, but it really is. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are, what background you come from, what color you are. It does not matter in that locker room. You're treated the same. Those kids would go to war for you, no matter who you are, just because you're their teammate. So you have definitely a special kind of bond. I noticed that a lot when I moved in originally, because I moved in early June, out of high school. So obviously I left all my hometown friends. Didn't really know what to expect going into a whole new world, especially playing a sport. But I mean, after spending a week with those kids on the football team, I felt like I had known them for years. So I feel like there definitely is a special kind of bond there. And like all those guys, you rarely run across anybody that treats you differently or is very cocky. But yeah,
That's great.